In 1953, the British governor of Kenya called Jomo Kenyatta a leader unto darkness and death. The British government imprisoned him. They called him a terrorist. They said he was too dangerous to ever be released. 10 years later, in 1963, that same British government was toasting Kenyatta with champagne at independence celebrations. British officials called him a statesman. They welcomed him as an ally. So what changed in those 10 years? Did the British lose in Kenya? Or did they find their perfect inside man? Today, we're looking at the evidence that makes some historians say Kenya's first president was actually working for the British. By the end, you'll understand why this question still matters in 2025. To understand this question, you need to know what happened before independence. In the 1950s, Kenyans fought an armed resistance against British colonial rule. This was the Mau Mau Rebellion. The British response was brutal. Over 100,000 Kenyans were detained. Jomo Kenyatta was arrested in 1952. The British accused him of leading the Mau Mau. He denied it, but they imprisoned him anyway for 9 years. When Kenya gained independence in 1963, Kenyatta became Prime Minister, then President in 1964. The Mau Mau fighters who had suffered in camps expected justice. They expected their land back. They expected the colonial system to be destroyed. But here's what actually happened. Here are 5 things that make people say Kenyatta was working for the British. Judge for yourself. Evidence number 1. He detained Mau Mau leaders after independence. After independence, many Mau Mau fighters expected to be celebrated as heroes. Instead, Kenyatta's government detained some of their leaders. J.M. Kariuki, a Mau Mau fighter who spent years in British detention camps after independence, he became an MP. He criticised Kenyatta's government for abandoning the poor. In 1975, he was found dead, tortured, and murdered. Many believe the government was involved. Bildad Kagia, another Mau Mau leader, pushed for land redistribution. Kenyatta called him, and others, communist agitators. They were politically destroyed. The question, why would Kenya's president suppress the very people who fought for independence? One answer, because they wanted the radical change that Britain didn't want. Evidence number 2. Kenya started independence in debt to Britain. Before independence, white settlers owned Kenya's best farmland, the Fertile Highlands. This land had been stolen from Africans, particularly the Kikuyu. When independence came, everyone expected this land to be returned. But here's what Kenyatta agreed to. Kenya's government would buy back the land from white settlers at full market price. And where would Kenya get the money? Britain loaned it to them. Let me repeat that. Kenya had to borrow money from Britain to buy back land that Britain had stolen in the first place. This was called the Million Acre Scheme. What this meant, Kenya started independence in massive debt to Britain. The debt had to be repaid with interest. This gave Britain continued economic leverage. Kenya was a debtor nation from day one. Who got the land once it was bought? Wealthy Kenyans, many of them Kenyatta's allies. The Kenyatta family alone acquired over 500,000 acres. Most Mau Mau fighters remained landless. The question, why would Kenyatta agree to a deal that put Kenya in debt to its former colonizer and enriched elites instead of freedom fighters? One answer, because that was the deal Britain demanded for a peaceful independence. Evidence number 3, he told Kenyans to forget the past, new, linguistic trick. In December 1964, Kenyatta gave a famous speech called Suffering Without Bitterness. In it, he told Kenyans to forget the past and forgive the British. This sounds noble. Forgiveness, unity, moving forward. But here's the context. The Mau Mau were still mourning thousands of dead. British torture camps had just closed. The wounds were fresh, and Kenyatta was telling them to forget. Critics say this wasn't about forgiveness, it was about silencing them. Why? Because if Kenyans kept talking about British atrocities, they might sue for reparations. They might demand justice. They might destabilize the British-friendly economic system Kenyatta was building. The phrase, "forget the past," appeared repeatedly in government messaging. Don't dwell on colonial crimes. Focus on the future unity over grievance. The result? For decades, Mau Mau fighters couldn't even get recognition as heroes. They were treated as embarrassments. It wasn't until 2003, 40 years later, that they were officially honored. The question, why was Kenyatta so desperate for Kenyans to forget what the British had done? One answer, because Britain needed Kenyans to move on. And Kenyatta delivered. Evidence number 4. The colonial economic system stayed intact. Kenya became politically independent in 1963, but economically almost nothing changed. What stayed the same? British companies controlled banking, Barclays, Standard Chartered. British firms controlled tea and coffee exports. English remained the official language. Kenya remained in the British Commonwealth. British military kept training bases in Kenya. Compare this to Tanzania next door. Tanzania's Julius Nyerere nationalized industries, kicked out foreign companies, pursued African socialism. Britain cut off aid and condemned him. Kenyatta did the opposite, protected British business interests, never nationalized any major industry, maintained a capitalist system favorable to foreign investment. The question, why keep the colonial economic structure intact? One answer, because that's what Britain wanted, a stable, business-friendly Kenya where British companies could keep making profits. Evidence number 5. He crushed anyone who challenged British interests. After independence, there was genuine political debate in Kenya. Oginga Odinga was Kenya's first vice president. He pushed for land redistribution, closer ties with the Soviet Union and China-African socialism, economic independence from the West. What Kenyatta did, forced Odinga to resign as VP in 1966, created a de facto one-party state. Eventually detained Odinga, anyone who advocated for radical economic change was labelled communist and destroyed politically. The pattern was clear: support British capitalism, stay in power, challenge British capitalism, get detained or killed, and declassified British documents proved Britain was paying attention. A 1963 British Colonial Office memo said, "Kenyatta understands the need for British investment. He will protect our interests better than the alternatives." After independence, British officials regularly met with Kenyatta. Britain provided military aid. British intelligence operated freely in Kenya. The question, why was Britain so comfortable with Kenyatta? One answer, because he was doing exactly what they wanted. Now, defenders of Kenyatta have their own case, and it's only fair to present it. Defense 1. He prevented civil war. Other African countries descended into coups and ethnic violence after independence. Kenya remained stable. Defense 2. He prevented economic collapse. If Kenya had kicked out all foreign companies and redistributed all land, the economy might have collapsed like Zimbabwe's later did. Defense 3. He inherited an impossible situation. Britain left massive inequality. No policy could have satisfied everyone. Defense 4. Results matter. Under Kenyatta, Kenya built roads, schools, hospitals. It became one of Africa's most stable countries. The defenders' argument, Kenyatta wasn't a puppet. He was a pragmatist who chose stability over revolution. So, was Kenya's first president a British puppet? Here's what we know for certain. Britain called him darkness and death in 1953. They toasted him with champagne in 1963. Mau Mau leaders were detained or killed. After independence, Kenya went into debt to buy back its own stolen land. Kenyans were told to forget British crimes. The colonial economic system stayed intact. British companies kept their power. Anyone who challenged this system was crushed. The question you have to answer, was Kenyatta a puppet who served British interests? A pragmatist who chose stability? Or an elite who used independence to enrich himself? But here's why this isn't just history. When you look at Kenyan politics in 2025, You're looking at the direct shadow of the deal Kenyatta made in 1963. The dynasty versus hustler debate. That's about the land Kenyatta kept in elite hands. The Kenyatta family's vast wealth. That started with the land deals of the 1960s. The inequality that drives every Kenyan election. That's the inequality Kenyatta chose not to fix. The British companies that still dominate Kenya's economy. Kenyatta let them stay. This isn't ancient history. This is the foundation of modern Kenya. The land Kenyatta protected in 1963 is the land Kenyans are still fighting over today. So was he a puppet? That's for you to decide. Make sure to hit that subscribe button for more stories like this. Leave your answer in the comments. And if you want to understand more about how colonial deals still shape Africa today, check out the video on Uganda's demand for the Indian Ocean. Thanks for watching.